In writing about the greatness of Frank Herbert's 1965 epic sci-fi novel Dune in the latest issue of National Review in advance of the release of Denis Villeneuve's forthcoming film version, I alluded to a misbegotten prior adaptation. By that, I meant director David Lynch's 1984 attempt to bring Herbert's vision to screen. Lynch, then fresh off The Elephant Man, and having turned down the opportunity to direct Return of the Jedi, is now probably best known for the exquisite weirdness of his work, particularly as manifested in the TV series Twin Peaks. Yet he largely considers Dune a disaster, a product of his inexperience with large-scale film production and of over-interference by the studio. Writing for Tor.com, however, Lincoln Michel finds something to admire in Lynch's Dune. It is quite appropriately weird. There is something to this, I think. Dune created an immersive world somewhat rooted in our own. All the characters are human after all, well, except the Harkonnens, yet also wholly distinct from it. At its best, Lynch's Dune does capture that. Michel is right to identify this scene as one of the best in that movie, even if it also is guilty of a big exposition dump. My main problem with Lynch's Dune, aside from the obvious criticisms, is that it doesn't get the book, especially some of the stuff that makes it weird. As I explained in the magazine, Dune does not depict the simple hero's journey of Paul Atreides, its main character. It is, rather, a warning about the dangers of false messiahs, of trusting overly in charismatic leaders, and of mixing politics and religion. Lynch's Dune does not capture this subtlety. Hence, Paul's travails in the film are fairly rote and conventional and seem almost superficial, leading inexorably to some triumph that feels relatively unearned and is not presented as somehow marred or malicious. Moreover, Lynch's Dune ends with a narration stating that Paul fulfilled Fremen prophecy. Because he and his mother, a member of the all-female Bene Gessert religious order of civilization manipulating psychics, had taken advantage of prophecies planted on Arrakis at some prior time. As for bringing peace and love where there was war and hatred, immediately after Dune ends, Paul leads the Fremen on a jihad that, by the time of Dune Messiah, the first Dune sequel Frank Herbert authored, has killed 61 billion, sterilized 90 planets, completely demoralized 500 others. And as for changing the face of Arrakis, this large-scale ecological transformation is something hinted at in Dune, but not meaningfully achieved on the desert world until the reign of his son Leto II, the God Emperor of Dune. And it's a good thing, too. The sandworms of Dune, whose life cycle produces the spice, drug, melange on which civilization depends, are fatally allergic to water. But Lynch's Dune ends with Paul having magically produced rain on Arrakis. This is not in the original text. If it were, all the sandworms would be killed, off-screen in Lynch's Dune. If it were being semi-faithful and insisted on keeping the rain but insisted on showing the results, you would hear the behemoth moans of the sandworms as they expired. So while David Lynch's Dune, despite some of its obvious flaws, does capture some of the essential weirdness of Frank Herbert's vision, it fails on account of a lack of faithfulness to the text that makes the story less weird than Herbert had made it. Whether Villeneuve will succeed where Lynch failed remains to be seen.